Good afternoon. I am Michelle Masucci, Vice President for Research at Temple University and co-chair of the Federal Demonstration Partnership. On behalf of Dick Seligman, my fellow co-chair, I would like to welcome you to our first online meeting. We are pleased to join you today and thank you for your interest and participation in the midst of the challenges we are all facing to ensure that the nation's research enterprise moves forward in a high quality and impactful manner. We look forward to seeing you again in person when it is possible to do so, but are pleased to be able to provide a virtual FDP meeting experience to continue to engage with our community. The virtual format of the May meeting will include today's federal updates plenary session, followed by 6 additional sessions that take place over the next week. You can find the entire agenda for the meetings at our website, thefdp.org, along with instructions on how to enroll in each session. Developing a virtual format for the FDP meeting has meant that it is not feasible for us to have 3 days of back-to-back and concurrent sessions typical of our in-person meeting. Therefore, we have limited the number of sessions in the new format in order to focus on the ones that are most critically important. We have created the opportunity for as many of you as are interested to join the sessions to be able to do so. They are organized in 2 different styles. Webinars are sessions with over 300 participants, like today's federal update session. And meetings are for smaller numbers of participants to support more in-person interactions. Again, if you have not already registered for the future sessions coming up this week, please do so by visiting our website. Translating the in-person meeting into an online format has been a daunting challenge. Thanks to the hard work of many individuals in the FDP and with the support of our National Academy partners, we have been able to do so. We wish to extend our sincere appreciation to the FDP Program Planning Committee members, the FDP management team, and the National Academies for their technical support. We will follow up with these meetings to learn about what worked well in this new format and to elicit suggestions about how to use this experience for future FDP events and meetings. It is now my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Dick Seligman, Associate Vice President for Research Administration at Caltech, and my fellow co-chair of the FDP.
Thank you, Michelle. We're pleased that so many of you can be with us today for this opening session of what is a grand experiment, namely a meeting online. So as our name implies, we are the Federal Demonstration Partnership, and today may be the biggest demonstration we've ever conducted. Our traditional federal update plenary session always begins our FDP meetings. Today we have nearly 600 participants in this session. And before turning our attention to the federal updates, we'd like to say a word about the transition from phase 6 to phase 7 of the FDP. As many of you know, the FDP takes place in 6-year segments known as phases. And we are currently in phase 6, which will conclude in September, and phase 7 will begin immediately thereafter. We're currently in the midst of the transition, and existing members of the FDP have been asked to indicate their interest in continuing into the next phase. And in addition, we have solicited applications from institutions that wish to join the FDP beginning with phase 7. We're currently reviewing the applications and hope to complete the process in the next few weeks so that new members will be notified with sufficient time to plan to attend our September meeting. And of course, at this time, we don't know whether the September meeting will be in person or online, but in either case, the new members will be invited to participate. And we look forward to welcoming them at our next meeting. So let's turn now to today's session. As you know, our major focus today is on the federal agency updates. This has long been a key feature of FDP meetings, and the importance of this session has been confirmed each and every time we've asked attendees to evaluate an FDP meeting. And in the midst of COVID-19, this session takes on even greater importance. So you'll be hearing from 7 different federal agencies, and to the greatest possible extent, we will provide an opportunity to address your questions. However, we may not be able to get to all the questions in the time allotted for this program, and therefore we'll keep track of the questions that have been asked but not answered. And following this session, we'll attempt to get the questions answered, and we'll then post both the questions and the answers on the FDP website. So now it is our pleasure to turn the program over to Debbie Raffi, the Director of Contracts, Grants, and Acquisitions at the Office of Naval Research. Debbie has been involved in the FDP for many years and holds the unofficial position of Dean of the Federal Agency Representatives. I've been informed that the term Dean is not listed in the job categories of the Office of Naval Research, but we think of Debbie as our Dean anyway. So Debbie, we're turning it over to you.
Thank you, Dick. Appreciate that. Welcome, federal agencies. Thank you for participating in whatever means of communication. We will have several presentations, and we will have several those who engage just on the phone. And we also have a pre-recorded presentation from the EPA. So as Dick mentioned, this will be a grand demo, probably the mother of all demonstrations for this phase. So we have a lot of content, so I will jump in, and to avoid any kind of technical complexities for me, I'm going to start off with the O&R update. And this will be presented by myself and Wade Wargo. And I will do the first set of slides, and Wade, and then I'll hand it off about halfway through to Wade Wargo to talk about some additional focus areas. So with that, next slide, please. All right, so 4 areas that we wanted to bring to your attention. Fed Connect, which is our new vendor portal. We have some changes due to COVID-19, and these are just some highlights. There is a more thorough deep dive of federal agencies and specific COVID-19 policies that is scheduled for next week. A closeout initiative for the DoD, as well as some personnel changes. So with that, next slide, please. So if you recall, in September, I think it was September of last year, I gave everybody a heads up about a vendor portal that O&R was standing up. It is currently live. This will be, again, for submission of white papers under our current broad agency announcement. And I think 2 other funding opportunity announcements. It is for submission also of contract proposals under our FY20 BAA. Just to be clear, any grant proposal will continue to be submitted under grants.gov. And so again, the most change probably to the academic community will be the submission of white papers through this vendor portal. So the next few slides I'm going to go through just give you a very high tutorial of how to get to information that will help you stand up an account in this vendor portal at no cost, and how to search for O&R funding opportunities. So next slide, please. All right, again, this went live in 21 April. The advantages here is that you will get a tracking number for your white paper when you submit it, and any correspondence between yourself and the program officer from that point in time will require the identification of that tracking number. This will also give you the opportunity, if you don't hear from O&R, to submit a tracking number and say, hey, I know I submitted it, I know the system accepted it, how come I've not heard anything? In addition, in this first phase, there is a cover page that is a 3-page PDF fillable requirement on a white paper as well as proposal. And you will be able to download that from the website. And again, that provides some basic information about your organization. and the particular technical area to which you are submitting a white paper under. Again, once you submit a white paper through this portal, it will be directed to the program officer, and then that program officer will correspond you directly via email back and forth. The points of contact for the vendor portal are on the slide there at the bottom. Next slide, please.
Debbie, sorry, don't mean to interrupt, but could you please speak closer to your microphone? A number of our attendees are having a difficult time hearing you.
Okay, sorry about that. All right. With respect to the question, how do I submit a white paper or a contract through FedConnect? Again, this will be a free account. And after you establish your account, you'll be able to sign in directly at the FedConnect. In the subsequent slides, I will go through some screenshots. Search for our solicitation announcement through either a broad agency announcement or a funding opportunity announcement. And then FedConnect will guide you through the submission process. If you're just curious about funding opportunities at O&R, you can go to the FedConnect page and browse our opportunities. You do not need an account for that. Next slide, please. All right, this is the O&R website. This is your starting point. I do apologize, it's several clicks. In entering this new virtual world, I've starting to embrace the motto that our information, the optimal scenario of our information as far as a website access, I'm trying to bring it down to 2 clicks. It's challenging, but that is our goal. This is not 2 clicks, but we are working on that. So if you go to our first landing page on the O&R public website, which is onr.navy.mil, click on the work with us, and then you will see to the left how to apply. Click on that. Next slide, please. This will be the page you see, the bottom left quadrant. There is Learn More tab under Submit an Application for Grant. You want to click on that. Next page. Next slide page. Scroll down about halfway on that page and you will see this shot. You'll see the PDF white paper cover page template. You want to download that because you will be uploading that within the FedConnect system. Right below that is a block highlighted where to submit, and there is your FedConnect web link. Next slide, please. This is the cover page. I do want to highlight questions 5 and 6 because the information is not that clear. On your cover page, which is the PDF that you will download, it will be asking for an O&R program officer point of contact. It will also be asking for an O&R program officer point of contact code number. And that's questions 5 and 6. I want to show you where you can pull that off on the O&R website. Next slide, please. So this is our first landing page. If you go to our research, and then you'll see this page, you'll see O&R technology areas. That is your magic path. So next slide, please. And this is the landing page for O&R technology areas. It's alphabetical, as you can see. So if you are interested, for example, on, I clicked on the first one, acoustic transduction, materials and devices. Next slide, please. The top left square is just a snapshot of more narrative on that technical area. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you will get the key information relative to the program officer and their department code and their email if you have questions. That's the information you want to transfer over to your fillable PDF, questions 5 and 6. Next slide, please. All right, so back to what you will see when you click on the FedConnect website. Next slide, please. This is the landing page. Focus on register for free account if you're a first-time user, or if you want, you can search public opportunities. You do not need an account. And then once you establish an account, as evident there, you can just sign in and get your, and navigate accordingly. Next slide, please. This is the search. The key for searching O&R announcements is for agency. you enter Navy, and then there's a second block. And then you put, search by agency, and then you want to put Navy. And as you can see, there's 3 O&R solicitations in Fed Connect right now. The broad agency announcement is our open and continuous, in which the majority of our white papers are submitted under. Mantech is a specific program, and that is for contracts, not grants. And then we have one FOA for Don Science and Technology area. Okay, next slide, please. All right, from here, I'm going to turn it over to Wade Wargo.
All right, thanks a lot, Debbie. I just wanted to, for those that don't know me, I'm Wade Wargo. I'm the director of our post-award function at ONR, so of the regional offices, and I just wanted to give some information about our how we've been operating. So this slide just indicates that our leadership directed all our employees to start working from home on March 17th. So that was both headquarters and all our regional offices. The folks in our Seattle office actually had started working from home prior to that. And then the second bullet is just to let folks know that we sent out an email blast to all our active ONR, all our active awardees for ONR awards. And so in this email blast, we let folks know of 3 things. One was, and by the way, the email would have come from an address that looked something like do-not-reply@onr.navy.mil. So hopefully you guys received that. The 3 things it indicated was, one was just to inform the recipients about DoD's implementation of the flexibilities in the OMB memo M20-17. Also to have a to show you the website where we put the related terms and conditions that deal with those COVID flexibilities, as well as the various other coronavirus authorities that relate to us. So you can see the web link there. And then lastly, just to let folks know that, given the fact that we're not working at all from our offices, to just request that all future correspondence be sent electronically. And also to say, since March 9th, if you had sent anything by mail, FedEx, et cetera, that you perhaps resend it through electronic methods, since we may not have processed it before, starting to work from home. So next slide. So as part of the flexibilities, I think the idea of the DoD implementation of the COVID terms and conditions was that it would be more of a blast concept and that we weren't going to do modifications. But one exception to that was that just given the way payments work in DoD, that we did intend to do no funds extensions for all the ONR grants that fit the criteria. That was in the OMB memo, and that's because we don't have a system like PMS or ASAP, where I think in those systems you might have the period of performance end date. We just have payment people that are looking at the last mod, and we were concerned they might reject payments. So we are substantively finished with all those mods. So if your university feels like you didn't see a no funds extension and you think it fit the criteria, please contact your administrative grants officer to find out what the story was on that. Second bullet is just to tell everyone that we did not do no funds extension modifications for other awards we administered. We left that to the awarding offices, the other DoD components, to issue their own. And then the third bullet is just to talk about refund checks, which you've heard me talk about before. But just to say, like, during this time, if you're submitting, physical checks for refunds to our offices, we won't be able to process them. If you recall, it was a year ago where I indicated that we were moving to a fully electronic refund process to use pay.gov. And so all our ONR grants and contracts since October 1st of last year should have language that requires the use of pay.gov. For all refunds, but for those awards that preceded that, we're asking you, if it is an ONR award, to go ahead and use pay.gov, since we otherwise won't be able to touch it until this pandemic resolves itself. We are working with our other DoD components to try to get other pay offices in pay.gov. I don't think, other than the MOCAS pay offices, which ONR uses, I don't think many DoD components have their pay systems on there. So we're working with them to see if we can get more pay offices in pay.gov, so you guys can submit that way. I understand the Army, there is a way to do a non-pay.gov electronic process, which is a little clumsier. So we hope to work with them to perhaps do a pay.gov route. Next slide. So this is just our a map of the ONR regional offices. We've got our 5 offices, and it shows you what states they deal with. But the major intent of this slide was just to show each of the offices group email inboxes. So if you're not sure of the contact information for your administrative grants officer or contracting officer, you could use these group email addresses and just send your question to that, and then, you know, put your grant number in there, and the person monitoring that can get that to the right person and then get you an answer. And then there's a link at the bottom that has a little more detailed information about the 5 regional offices. Next slide. So I just wanted to let folks give an early warning about one closeout initiative. Now, this is a DoD-wide initiative. We're working with the DoD Grants and Agreements Regulations Working Group. So that's, you know, Barbara Orlando who leads that up. And we have a post-award sub-working group, I guess you would call it. And under that, we just completed drafting a unilateral closeout policy, which it was informed by NIH's policy. So we hope to eventually release a term and condition that talks to the scenario in which, if we don't receive a final financial report from you, how we would handle that scenario. And we believe this would be helpful for recipients in their dealing with subawardees, because some of that language you would use as a flow down, and we believe that would help you in that relationship. And particularly with, you know, if you have a subrecipient that's using not final rates, but provisional, it kind of instructs what to do in that scenario. It's in the review process at the moment, but just giving folks a heads up, at some point you'll see a term and condition in the closeout provisions that talk to that, and you might just be hearing from awarding offices about you know, our implementation of that, which does sync well with the 2 CFR proposed changes that are making closeout within a year more of a firm requirement rather than the sort of suggested timeframe. Next slide. So this is my last slide. This is just to mention a personnel change. So in our Atlanta regional office, Susan Cadu used to be the regional director there. She has since I think October of last year moved into a new position where she's now overseeing our administration system called CAMUS. Right now the acting director of that office is James Gandy, and you can see his information there. So if you have problems, contact him. I did want to also mention that my email address on the first slide was incorrect. It says Wago instead of Wargo, but hopefully you can see my email address on some of the other presentations we've had in the past. But I think that's next slide. I think that's the last one. So off to you. Yeah, and this was just, you can go to the next one, which was just a backup slide, which mentions how I mentioned a year ago about this move to fully electronic refunds, which, you know, the Navy itself had its own policy saying because of audit issues, they wanted to get out of the paper check process for, you know, or paper, you know, they wanted to go to electronic process for all collections. And I think the other services are moving that direction as well. So that's it for me. Debbie, any questions?
Okay, thank you, Wade. We got several questions. Some of them are very quick that I can answer, but others are a little bit more lengthy and technical, so I won't answer them for the sake of time. For white papers, I do recommend that the PI submit the white papers and not OSP, not representation from the Office of Sponsored Programs, because the white paper will go to the program officer and be a technical discussion rather than a formal submission. all the other questions fairly technical, so I'm not going to be able to answer those at that point in time. And for the sake of time, I'm going to move on in the agenda. So next up on agency updates will be NASA, and we have Mary and Chris presenting. So I'm going to turn the audio over to them.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Chris Murguia. I'm a senior analyst in NASA's Grants Policy and Compliance branch. Today, I'm on the line with my colleague Mary Sladek. She works in NASA's Science Mission Directorate, and we'll be providing very brief updates today. Next slide, please. You can see here, this is just our contact information. Again, Mary Sladek, she's a program manager in the Science Mission Directorate. And then me, Chris Murguia, a senior analyst in the Grants Policy and Compliance branch in NASA. Next slide, please. First, I would just like to give a reminder that NASA has adopted the OMB flexibilities that they issued through memorandas in 2017 and in 2020. If you recall, in Memorandum M2017 is the memo that provides a number of COVID-19 related flexibilities for those who are administering grants and cooperative agreements. Memo M2020 is the memo that provides flexibilities for refiguring or reconstituting grants. So for example, under Memo M2020, the grantee has grant purchase supplies or equipment. They can donate those supplies and equipment to first responders who are addressing COVID-19. So we have adopted the flexibilities in both of those memoranda. We have put out a policy document that displays how we have adopted the policies in 2017. And those are available online in the first link you see there, the one that begins with www.nssc.nasa.gov. In addition to that policy document that shows exactly what flexibilities we have adopted, we've also put out an FAQ document that answers some frequent questions we've received from our program managers within NASA, as well as our grant recipients. In addition to the grants and cooperative agreements flexibilities that we've adopted, we've also adopted flexibilities for contracts. And those contract flexibilities can be found on that second link on that slide. Next slide, please. One update for the grants community is that we will be releasing an update to NASA's Proposers Guidebook. So for any of you that have received a grant from NASA, you are probably well aware with this guidebook. It is the document that outlines all of our requirements for proposals that are submitted to notices of funding opportunities, or NOFOs. The Proposers Guidebook was last updated in 2018, and we will be updating it this year. The updates are relatively minor in nature, and I'll just describe those changes in the next slide. But you should not expect any major changes in that Proposers Guidebook. Thank you. This slide here just kind of compares some of the wording that we use in the current 2018 version of the guidebook versus the upcoming updates in 2020. So again, these changes are very minor. For example, we've changed every instance of the term funding announcement to notice of funding opportunity, or NOFO. Here in NASA, we have an office called the Office of STEM Engagement. In 2018, that was incorrectly referred to as the Office of Education, right? So we're just kind of going through this guidebook and updating some of the language there. Next slide, please. And that is it for me regarding grants management. The main points of contact for NASA in the FDP is my colleague Kanisha Cobbs, who's also in the Grants Policy and Compliance branch, and the head or chief of our Grants Policy and Compliance branch, Anthony Crank. Now I will hand it over to my colleague Mary Sladek in NASA's Science Mission Directorate. Mary?
Thanks, Chris. Next slide, please. So I'm here representing my supervisor, who's the Deputy Associate Administrator for Research, Michael New. He regrets that he couldn't join you today. This is a very busy week. And also greetings from Dr. Max Bernstein, who has been with the FDP meetings off and on over the years. I wanted to give you a quick update since the January FDP, where our colleagues in Grants Policy mentioned that the Science Mission Directorate is engaging in a dual anonymous peer review pilot. I'm now able to say this link I'm providing provides a full list of which funding announcements under ROSES are taking part. Briefly, just a refresher on what the dual anonymous pilot is about. We all know that normally proposers are not told who reviews their proposals, and then we call that anonymous review, and that's true for dual anonymous review too. But what makes it dual is that the proposal is written in such a way as it does not disclose the PI or other team member names or identities. So why is the Science Mission Directorate engaging in dual anonymous review? We are seeking to reduce some unconscious bias. We're exploring how to make the review process more equitable and fairer, improve the quality and review that's going back to folks, and also to see if this shift or change in preparation on the evaluation of proposals really has an impact on proposal quality. Where is this dual anonymous peer review taking place? It's taking place in part of our research opportunities in space and earth sciences, which is a notice of funding opportunity that compiles about 100 separate funding opportunities or competitions from across the astrophysics, heliophysics, earth, and planetary science divisions. There are specific guidelines for anonymous proposal how to prepare proposals, and not all 100 are participating. So if you want to know more about it's about less than 10 are participating, and the link I've provided, provides you more information from which elements are participating and how to prepare your proposal. Next slide, please. And so this is our last slide. Science Mission Directorate is very concerned and interested in seeing how it can help mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. Back on March 20th, our Associate Administrator, Dr. Thomas Zurbuchen, you see his Twitter handle there, hosted a town hall. You can listen to the whole audio replay, or you can just read his dear colleague at the URL that's provided. And my boss and all the leaders of SMD are continuing to look at ways to think about adjusting funding priorities and review practices on existing awards and new proposals. Among the issues we're looking at are can SMD simplify the review of augmentations and funded extensions, or funded extensions? They're different at NSF. I mean, they're different at NASA than they are at NSF or other agencies. So we're looking at ways that maybe we can simplify that process for existing awards that may need a change in scope. And another thing we're looking at is we're interested in working with universities on mitigating the risk to current graduate students and postdocs. And if you have comments on this or just ideas you want to share, I encourage you to write to my boss, Michael H. New at nasa.gov, and that's michael.h.new at nasa.gov. And so thank you. I don't know if we got any questions, but
Yes, this is Debbie. We have one question for NASA. I'm going to read it. Does NASA require quarterly financial reports for individual awards, or does the cumulative quarterly PMS report, which lists individual awards and disbursements, meet the quarterly financial report requirement? Over.
Yeah, it's a great question. I can take that. So we do require quarterly SF425s, right? That's the financial report in PMS. In addition to those quarterly financial reports, we require annual performance progress reports. And just to clarify on the financial reports, the financial report is made up of two different sections. Right? There's the what's called the Federal Cash Transaction Report that you complete one day, and then you have to wait 24 hours to complete the Financial Status Report, I believe it's called. So it's essentially a two-part report, but those are both due every quarter.
Thank you, Chris.
Any other questions?
No further questions for NASA. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next agency to present will be Air Force OSR, and we have Calvin Scott presenting. Calvin, turning the audio over to you.
Okay, no problem. So let me get to my first slide. Okay, so my name is Calvin Scott, and I'm the Air Force. I'm the Senior Procurement Analyst for the Air Force Office of Scientific Research. My point of contact is listed on the slide. Has my it has my work email as well as the Air Force BAA email, which I manage that particular box. So if you guys have any questions in regards to this presentation or anything Air Force specific related to the grants, please don't hesitate to give me a call or send me an email. All right, slide. Today, this is what we'll be discussing: the leadership changes, COVID-19 contingency operations, about us, our granting process, the research areas, improving competitiveness, and our current opportunities within the Air Force. All right. Recently, within the past few weeks, we've welcomed a new director of the Air Force Office of Scientific Research, Dr. Sherry Welsh, I'm sorry. Next slide. Also, we've welcomed a new AFRL contracting director, Ms. Rosalind Harper. Ms. Harper will also be the contracting ombudsman. So if you guys have any specific things that need to be resolved that you aren't able to resolve with the grants officer and or PO, then in your grant, in the terms and conditions of the grant, it has a ombudsman email. Ms. Harper is going to be responsible for responding to that email. All right. Next slide. Okay. The Air Force is aware of the COVID-19 impacts and have sent out a NCE memo in accordance with the OMB memo. If you have any COVID-19 concerns or questions, please don't hesitate to contact the program officer, grants officer, and or myself via email. We are aware that, there have been impacts as far as transitioning, to more of a teleworking or a virtual workspace, and some grantees have been impacted, and some grantees, depending on where you are in your research, you may have been able to, kind of take some of your work home, and some of the work may have, just been stalled. So reach out to your program officers and grants officers to kind of let them know, so that, an NCE or any administrative modifications can be taken care of. All right, next slide. All right, this slide basically provides a breakdown of the Air Force's current technical directorates, and we refer to them as TDs. As you will see, there are 9 TDs, but nothing in regards to the TDs has changed, so I'm going to just move to the next slide. All right, the Air Force has a unique role in AFRL. As one of the 9 technical directorates, AFOSR has the charter for identifying and funding all basic research in the Air Force. AFOSR is the natural gateway for our university connections, and I'll talk more about this in a few minutes. The Air Force, this slide just kind of gives detail on, how we work with the Air Force. The Air Force funds research, and we forward the research to the Air Force. We have roughly 35 POs in DC and 18 distributed overseas throughout Europe, Asia, and South America. All right, next slide. All right, this slide just illustrates the Air Force's granting process from proposal input to closeout. The only thing that I'll kind of foot stomp on this is we encourage the PIs as they're developing their proposals or considering submitting the proposal to reach out to the program officers early in the process to discuss, what the Air Force's actual interests are. And this could be an opportunity for the program officers to, if it's not something that the Air Force is interested in, all of our program officers have great working relationships with the Army, Navy, DARPA, and so on. So they could at least refer you to someone that, may be interested in the research, because they are, they converse constantly. All right, next slide. On this slide, you'll see AFOSR's research areas, which are described in great detail in our current BAA that's listed on the slide. All right, next slide. To improve competitiveness, I'd recommend that, again, you reach out to the program officer early, and you kind of follow the steps that are illustrated in the on a little chart. You want to review the BAA to understand the true Air Force's needs. You want to draft a short idea statement, which is commonly referred to as a white paper. Send it to the program officer for review. And of course, you want to take the final step in submitting your proposal via grants.gov. Next slide. Also, we would encourage you, when possible, to attend grant writing courses to ensure that you're submitting a strong and relevant and well-budgeted proposal. Next slide. Okay. All right, the intent of this slide is to provide an understanding in regards to the funding considerations. The program officers consider all factors listed prior to deciding which proposals to fund. So again, please make sure you reach out to the program officers early and often throughout your proposal development process, as this is going to be key to you receiving funding. All right. Next, on that slide. 14. All right. Another way to improve competitiveness when reviewing the BAA is considering partnering with other institutions or industry, attending program reviews to gain a true understanding of the Air Force's interests. There are also opportunities for Center of Excellence BAAs, which are posted annually. All right. Okay, and this slide just highlights the various opportunities within the Air Force in regards to receiving grants or funding for basic research. And next slide. All right, for interest in DoD, SBIR/STIR programs, please click on the link below, as this link has several opportunities for industry to partner with the institutions, as well as to submit proposals on your own. But this is going to be, the SBIR/STIR program is geared more so towards applied research. All right, and the final slide, in regards to questions, if you guys have any questions that have not been addressed or that you would like additional insight, please reach out to the program officers of your specific portfolio, or myself if you're having, if there's a disconnect in reaching and connecting with the program officers, and I'll do my best to get you connected with them within a week or so.
Thank you, Calvin. We have two brief questions, if you don't mind hanging on for another second.
Oh, perfect.
The first question is, how long should the white paper be for AFRL?
Typically, the white papers are between 1 to 2 pages. Sometimes there may be an instance where the white papers are 3 pages, but the general consensus with the program officers at our organization have requested that they be 1 to 2 pages.
Okay, thank you, Calvin. The second question and the last question for Air Force OSR is, would Air Force OSR consider adopting a formal system for submission and review of white papers like the one we just heard about, meaning the Office of Naval Research?
We're working on it. So it's in the process. We're just, currently we're looking at the benefits of receiving white papers, accounting for white papers, as well as exactly what that process would look like. So we are looking at, because we would kind of consider that like a two-step BAA, and we're looking at, you know, advantages and disadvantages of the two-step BAA and the impact on the workforce. So it's something we're working on. I may have more insight on that for the next FDP meeting, but I'll take a note for that one so that, you know, we can at least get something to address it the next meeting.
Thank you, Calvin. Appreciate that feedback. And just as a side comment, I would love for there to be a DoD-wide portal for this kind of submission. But first things first, we got to get through this COVID-19.
That would be great.
World first. So thank you, Calvin. The next agency up for presentation will be NIH, and we have Kristen Ta. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Kristen.
All right, great, thank you. So as Debbie mentioned, I'm Kristen Ta. I'm a senior advisor in our NIH Office of Policy for Extramural Research, which is in the Office of Extramural Research. And I'm just going to be giving some updates today on some recent and forthcoming policy updates for NIH. So next slide, please. Okay, so COVID-19, next slide. I know this is a topic that's on everybody's mind. NIH has received significant amount of funding for COVID-19 research, but of course, patient care and researcher safety is our first priority. So we're concerned about the health and safety of those involved in our research, both the researchers and those participating in trials and studies. And so we're working with our recipients to make sure that that can all be carried out safely. And alongside that, we're providing many administrative flexibilities in line with the flexibilities provided by OMB for our recipients to make sure that they can manage their grants and all of their funding during the crisis. So next slide. So I haven't listed out many of our FAQs here, but you can go to our OER COVID-19 website to see all of the guide notices and frequently asked questions that we've issued related to COVID-19. We do update the FAQs weekly, at least. So if you have questions that haven't been answered, please continue to check there as we do update regularly. You can also continue to send questions to our grants policy inbox, and those that we see more often, we do update the FAQs to make sure that things are clear for you guys. I did want to touch on a couple of our most frequently asked questions just in this presentation. The first being whether grants will be extended, either no-cost extensions or funded extensions, to account for the public health emergency and the delays that that's caused. So NIH is providing maximum flexibility in this area. Obviously, recipients already have their ability to do a first no-cost extension in most cases, but we will also be approving second no-cost extensions, and we're also considering mid-project period extensions for work that's, you know, being paused in the middle of the research. And this applies broadly across all activity codes. For funded extensions, those are being handled by the funding ICs on a case-by-case basis. So if you have a need for a funded extension, you would need to go to your funding IC to discuss that in more detail. Another question that we've gotten very regularly, and we've been trying to clarify our guidance on this so that it's extremely clear, is related to salary charges. So we are extending the OMB flexibility that allows for charging of salaries to NIH awards when work cannot be performed on the grant. But this must be in line with an institutional policy that allows for such charges. So this would be some kind of, you know, a disaster policy, an emergency policy at the institution, and that policy needs to apply consistently across all funding sources. So you can't simply charge your NIH grants because there's money available if you're not applying that policy consistently across your institution. And so if you submit requests for those type of charges, you may hear from the ICs that they want to see a copy of that policy and understand that it's being applied appropriately. And then lastly, this is an FAQ that will likely be posted today or tomorrow related to how to report delays in your research. So many institutions have been submitting kind of general letters to NIH on the impact of COVID on their institution and what they're doing to address it. We don't really need those kind of broad communications, but those types of details should be provided in the progress reports that you submit. So in your next RPPR for your NIH award, you would describe the effects of COVID-19 on that grant, any delays associated with that in your research progress, and then NIH will consider that in the review of your progress report before the next year's funding. And so if you have more detailed questions about COVID-19, I'm going to plug our session next week where Dr. Lauer, our Deputy Director for Extramural Research, will be presenting along with my boss, Michelle Bulls from OPRA. They'll be doing a panel with some other folks from across the federal government about COVID-19, the challenges there, and how we're all working together to provide flexibilities where we can for you guys. Okay, so next slide. All right, so forms updates. Next slide. This is more of a reminder, but Monday is May 25th, which is the cutoff for the new forms for NIH. So we'll be switching over from Forms E to Forms F. We've published a couple of guide notices that give you details on all of the forms updates that we've made for this year. And there will actually be another guide notice coming out this week. Along with the forms updates, we've been reposting reissuing all of our funding opportunity announcements to have the application packages for the new set of forms. There are a few parent announcements where those reissued FOAs have not been published yet. And so you'll see a guide notice coming out tomorrow that will list those out and let you know that you should continue to use the Forms E package for those until the Forms F reissuance is posted. And so this includes our parent FOAs for successor and interest, change in recipient organization, the parent announcement for administrative supplements, which I know a lot of folks are using right now for COVID-19 supplements, as well as our parent announcements for urgent competitive revisions and emergency competitive revisions, which are also being used a lot right now for COVID-19 applications. So you can continue to use those Forms E packages until you see the reissued funding opportunity announcements, which will be posted, and the links will be included in all of the appropriate notices of special interest. So you'll have that information when it is updated. Okay, next slide. So getting back to kind of a not COVID-19 related topic that we had been working on before things kind of got sidetracked. Next slide. As everyone knows, last summer NIH issued a guide notice regarding other support where we clarified that other support is all resources made available to a researcher, whether it has monetary value or not. And so that update was made to facilitate transparency and reporting of all research activities, both domestic and foreign, and not merely those that were financial. Next slide. So it's been a little while since then, but we have been continuing to work in this area. Some of the things we've been doing are listed out here. So we're participating Fed-wide in areas to update our other support forms and instructions. And so this has included participating in groups with the State Department, participating in OSTP's J-Core efforts in the Subcommittee on Research Security. And we've also been working closely with our partners at NSF to see how they're collecting current and pending support, how they're working BioSketch into Science CV, and all of those kinds of changes. So next slide. And so for NIH, what we're currently working through when we're not thinking about COVID is we will be updating our policy to clarify the standard terms and conditions for what needs to be submitted with other support, what needs to be submitted in the BioSketch. And if you've seen the recent communications from NSF about their forms updates, you can expect that our updated NIH information is going to follow kind of a similar flow and format because we've worked closely with them to harmonize those requirements. Next slide. And so along with those policy updates, we'll also have updates to our application instructions, the other support format page, and all of the data elements that are captured there, and all of our online resources. And so what you'll see is we've really taken a look at the other support format page, the BioSketch, where things might have been duplicated or similar before, and we're really trying to streamline that to make it simpler and easier for all of you to submit. Okay, next slide. And so lastly, I just wanted to touch on a couple of HHS level initiatives that we've been working on that you're likely going to hear more about coming up in the next couple of months. So next slide. So you may have heard about the HHS REINVENT Grants Management Initiative, which is an initiative at the HHS level to reduce administrative burden and increase transparency, resource optimization, and efficiency across HHS grants management. So one of the initiatives that you'll likely be hearing about over the summer this year is the standardized notice of award page 1. And so it was originally called the NOAA cover sheet, but it's now the page 1 of the notice of award. So what this looks like is for all HHS operating divisions and staff divisions, when you get a notice of award from us, they will all have the same page 1. So those data elements will be standardized across all of HHS. And so we've been working closely with them on identifying what those data elements will be, what the definitions are for each of those. And we're currently working with ERA, and similar conversations are going on with other systems to get this finalized. And so the plan is for at the beginning of the next fiscal year in October, all of the notices of award coming out from HHS will have this standard page 1. So we'll be putting out guide notices and other communications to show you all what that's going to look like over the summer. Another effort we're working on as part of REINVENT Grants Management is the SF425 Federal Financial Report. So this is a 2-phased effort. The first phase, which they're working on right now, is the submission of the FFR via HHS payment management system. So folks with NIH grants currently are familiar with submitting their FFRs to NIH through ERA Commons. But under this initiative, all HHS optives will be everyone submitting reports to HHS will be submitting them directly through the payment management system. So that will be standardized across the board. The second phase of this effort is actually moving to eliminate the requirement for the quarterly cash transaction reporting. Since we're now in sub-accounts and the sub-account is tied directly to the grant, there's really not a need for that quarterly cash transaction reporting like there was when we were in pooled accounts. So the HHS Office of Grants is working with the optives to develop a policy to eliminate that quarterly reporting requirement. Recipients would instead certify at the time of drawdown that the funds will be used for that award and will be used in line with the terms and conditions. And so that was all the updates I had for today, I believe. Though I'm sure there may be many questions.
Thank you, Kristen. Yes, I have a handful of questions. I will try to read them as clearly and as possible. So question number 1, can the NIH please reconsider the requirement that the Ruth L. Kirshner National Research Service Award individual fellowship activation notices be wet ink signed and accept electronic signatures instead?
So I'm having trouble remembering now if it's the fellowship or the training one that I'm thinking of.
National Research Service.
So that
Fellowship.
form, I believe, is the one that has the Social Security number on it, which was a reason why we could not accept electronic signatures for those, because we can't have folks emailing around forms that have the Social Security number on them. But we are providing flexibility for those forms. ICs can accept a signed certification from the institution that they will submit this form as soon as feasible, and that can be kept in the file so that things can continue to move forward. And I believe that that is in our FAQs.
Thank you. Question number 2. In the NIH grant application, HS/CT section, question number 3.2 still says, quote, multi-site, domestic, non-exempt, HSR using the same protocol, end quote. However, per a common rule, the SIRB is still required when different protocols are used. How do we answer this question?
That's a very specific question, and I remember it coming up in our discussions about single IRB, but I'm not remembering the answer at this moment.
Respond later.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so
I
you
would
can respond
recommend,
later.
if I can either respond to this in writing offline later, or if you want to send it to our human subjects mailbox, they'll be able to get that back to you quickly with a response.
Okay, question number 3. For the admin supplication, just says
Probably
SU
supplement.
supplement requests that are being submitted through grants.gov. Will the application packages be updated in grants.gov, or is it the applicant's responsibility to upload the updated form?
Okay, so yeah, so the parent announcement that's out right now has the Forms E packages. When we reissue that FOA, it will have the Forms F packages, and at that point, you'll need to start using Forms F. So if you're using the current FOA, the forms that are there, you can use those and submit those. The Forms F packages will be available when they're ready. So it's not on the applicant to pick anything that's not already available with that FOA.
Question number 4. PA-20-191, parent KO1, independent basic experimental studies with humans required, is still only posted as Form Z on grants.gov. What is the status of release of the Forms F package?
So I know our systems folks are working quickly to get those updated and reissued as soon as possible. I would say if you don't see it reissued today, if you email our systems policy office, which is just operasystemspolicy@nih.gov, they can give you an update on that. I didn't have that noted on my list of ones that will be kind of extended indefinitely until the new ones are updated. So it should be in process and be getting updated soon.
Thank you. Question number 5. We have about 8, 9 questions. So question number 5, it's a question and then there's a comment that follows. The question is, any idea for timeline on other support clarifications? And here's the comment. Please do not follow NSF's lead with regard to other support unless we can automatically pull in information from Commons or ORCID. NSF's implementation of Science CV requires manual, in capital letters, input of all information. End of comment.
So yeah, in terms of timeline, we're hoping that this will be something that we're able to finish up in the next couple of months. COVID has definitely put a delay on this. We had been working on it pretty hard before this all happened, but we are hoping that this will keep moving in the next couple months. In our initial rollout, it likely won't be tied to ORCID or Commons because right now that the data in our form is not structured data. So we don't have a way to really do that easily without a lot of programming and work, but it is something that we're looking at doing. We're hoping to line that up with Science CV, potentially with ORCID and with our ERA system so that it's much easier to pull that, but that won't be part of the first phase of this effort.
Next question. When you say that the new form is being coordinated with NSF, does that mean that you will take Science CV as the biosketch?
So that's the end goal, but again, that's likely not going to happen at the front end. We are looking at ways to integrate and use the Science CV biosketch. That's still ongoing, but not yet.
Okay. We have 3 more questions.
Okay.
NIH regarding HHS Standard Award, page 1. Are you discussing how to send us those standard data elements electronically as data elements, not as data on an email?
So it's still going to come in the same PDF format. It's just the way that that is going to look is going to be standardized across all of HHS. I don't know if there have been any discussions at the HHS level about sending that out in a way that can be pulled as structured data elements.
Okay. Next question. What is the time frame for NIH to use Science CV? Also, when is the expected time frame for update OS guidance and OS forms?
So like I said, we're working on that to get it done as quickly as possible. I would hope that we would have it out early this summer, sometime in the next couple of months.
Okay. This is the last question. We have many other questions, but we've run out of time, so we will address those questions offline. But the last question today is, when submitting FFRs via PMS, will there be an option for submitting data files for multiple grants at one time, as opposed to the current model of keying in data points for individual grants, FFRs in ERA Commons.
I know that's something that has come up in the discussions about implementation, but I'm not part of our systems team, so I haven't been in all of those conversations, and I'm not sure where they've landed on that. I can definitely look into that and send an answer. And that information will also be in the communications that'll be coming out about that more this summer. We'll have more details like that.
All right, thanks, Krista. I really appreciate your time and your participation.
Great, thank you.
We will send any questions that were not addressed online. We will address those offline and have them posted as part of the FDP after action meeting location. So
Cool.
Thank you, Krista.
Great, sounds good.
Next up will be National Science Foundation, Miss Jean Feldman. I'm going to turn the mic over to you, and I look forward to hearing about America Competes.
Got nothing on America Competes today. Next slide, please. Sorry, need to go down here. My name's Jean Feldman. As Debbie has already mentioned, I'm head of the policy office in the Division of Institution and Award Support at NSF, which is part of the Office of Budget Finance and Award Management. And as always, and you'll be hearing this throughout the presentation, contact us at policy@nsf.gov. Next slide, please. So I'm going to cover a variety of topics today. One thing I'd like to note at the outset is that I will not be covering COVID-19 as part of this presentation. Rather, there is a presentation next week on Thursday from 1 to 3, and I will be on that panel and we'll be going into pretty significant detail about what NSF is doing relative to COVID-19. But as Dick has already mentioned, this is truly unprecedented times, and our thoughts are with all of you, our research community partners, during this very difficult and challenging time. So what I will be covering today is a brief update on some very important leadership changes at the National Science Foundation. Something that I am sure that all of you would like to hear about is our implementation of the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide going into effect on June 1st, so a very short time away. Our policy implementation for the biographical sketch and current and pending support. Some important information from our colleagues in NSF's Division of Financial Management on payment information during COVID-19, and then very briefly ending with our proposal submission modernization updates, as well as outreach. Next slide, please. So, as many of you are aware, we have had some important leadership changes. Dr. France Cordova finished her 6-year term as NSF director. She departed NSF at the end of March. We also now have received a nominated director, Dr. Panchananthan. Many of you may know him. He is actually known as Panch, but he is already an NS National Science Board member, and he is currently the Executive Vice President and Chief Research and Development Innovation Officer of the Knowledge Enterprise Development and Director of the Center for Cognitive Ubiquitous Computing at Arizona State University. While we wait for our new director to be confirmed by the Senate, Dr. Kelvin Drogemeyer, who many of you also know, who is the director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy. He is currently serving in the interim as the acting director of NSF. And finally, Dr. Sean Jones is serving as the acting assistant director of our Mathematical and Physical Sciences Directorate. He is stepping in, Dr. Ann Kinney, who was the Assistant Director for Mathematical and Physical Sciences, has departed NSF to become Deputy Director of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. Next slide, please.
Hey, Jean, real quick. Do you mind adjusting your camera? I think our guests are having a hard time seeing you.
Oh, okay. Well, my camera is right. Is that better?
We're just on your forehead right now.
Okay, well, is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because now I have to sit back like this to see the slide. So I'm sorry about that. That's where the camera is on my computer. So right in front of you, you see key dates for the 2020 version of the PAP Guide. Many of you know this process extremely well. You've been through it many, many times. We usually post the PAP Guide for public comment in the spring. We did that this past year in 2019. We typically publish the final version in October, and then we implement in January. This year's cycle was very, very different. It is demonstrative of how seriously the foundation takes your feedback. We received a lot of comments in response to this version of the PAP Guide, and we took every one of those comments seriously. And it took us more time this year to ensure that all of the comments were fully considered and resolved. And so this new PAP Guide, 20-1, will be effective June 1st for all proposals submitted or due on or after that day. Typically, we give you 90 days to digest the changes, to get ready for the changes before we actually implement the PAP Guide. But this year, we gave an extra month of time, 120 days to be exact, and I'm going to cover why we extended the normal time as we go through the presentation. Next slide, please. Now, probably one of, and I apologize, I suddenly have some very loud noise in the condo above me. What we are doing, which we believe will be incredibly important news for the community, is that due to the, oh my gosh, you all probably can't even hear me. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the ensuing stress on our proposer community, the research community hasn't been able to adequately prepare and train their staff for implementation of the new requirements. We have heard you loudly and clearly, and that is why we are about to present this important information to you. NSF has made the decision to delay the requirement regarding use of the NSF approved formats until October 1st, 2020. You will have to continue to format the documents in accordance with the PAP Guide requirements, including the 2-page limitation for the biographical sketch. And NSF continues to encourage the community to use these formats, as it has provided us extremely valuable feedback and actually heavily weighed into our decision to not compliance check that aspect and actually implement those on October 1st. So what is going to happen? NSF will continue to implement all other changes to the PAP Guide beginning June 1st, 2020, including the requirement, the new requirement to certify annually in the system for award management, the new requirement for providing email documentation of proposal program officer approval for those rapid and eager proposals, and finally, clarifications to current and pending support coverage, as well as other changes throughout the document. If you can go to the next slide, please. So on this slide, I'm going to talk a bit about our policy implementation of the biographical sketch. And I do hope that it's going to provide, at least my hope is that you will be able to get some, I can hopefully clarify rather, some important misunderstandings about both the biographical sketch and then current and pending support that I'm going to address as part of this slide. So we are requiring, as it said before, we're not requiring NSF to use an NSF-approved format to generate the biographical sketch. It says it on the slide, but we have actually changed that, and that format requirement will go into place on October 1st. We do have language on your appointments, but we've clarified it. We've always required you to identify your appointments, but we want to make sure that we're very clear about the fact that we need any titled academic, professional, or institutional position, whether or not payment is received. Very, very important information in terms of providing all of those appointments. Now, I will tell you that we have received in the past week a few questions on what is a professional appointment, and we are actually at the present time providing or developing an FAQ that will respond to those questions. So stay tuned for that. The synergistic activities section was clarified again to indicate what it is more clearly that we're looking for in that particular section. So the synergistic activities section of the bio-sketch is intended to provide a demonstration of the broader impact of the individual's professional and scholarly activities that focuses on the integration and transfer of knowledge as well as its creation, and we've highlighted that for the individual. We ask for 5 of those. Let me reiterate, we ask for 5 of those, a list of 5 distinct examples that demonstrate those broader impacts. These synergistic activities should be specific, and they must not include multiple examples to further describe the activity. Now, we continue to receive a lot of requests, though, from individuals who are testing out, for example, the NSF fillable format or Science CV, and they say the space isn't enough. When we go in and have looked at what they've attached, they have provided examples, but under each examples, there are 10 or more sub-examples. That's not what we're looking for. When we say 5, we mean a list of 5 distinct examples. And there is more information on that as part of our FAQ document. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So current and pending support information. And I really want to focus on this because this is vitally important that you leave here really understanding what it is that we're looking for. So NSF uses the information to assess the capacity of the individual to carry out the research as proposed, as well as to help assess any potential overlap and duplication. We require senior personnel, as I've said before, this second bullet, we will not be implementing, we will not be requiring individuals to use that NSF approved format. Rather, what you will be providing and making sure you comply with are all of the requirements that are contained in the PAT guide relative to the content. So you will still upload your PDF as you always have, if that is your desire, but it must comply with the requirements in terms of content. It has to provide all current and pending support, irrespective of whether such support is provided through the proposing organization or directly to the individual. Let me reiterate how important it is that you understand that bullet, because folks are saying to us, well, we really only can provide to you what, or we're only knowledgeable about what is coming through the institution. Well, if NSF and our reviewer community wants to fully assess the capacity of the individual, we need to know about all of the support of that individual. Now, one other point that I would like to make on this particular slide is that what we're looking for is the amount of information that current or pending support will take in terms of person months. Okay, so we've received many questions that state, well, we are not asking for any, the PI is not asking for any salary support. Therefore, on the budget, therefore, we have to put 0 on current and pending support. It is vital that folks understand they need to separate these items out. What information that you're asking for in terms of budgetary support from NSF and providing the person months that go along with that is separate and distinct from current and pending support. Many of these individuals, when we've gone back and asked for clarification, they said, yes, it's because they're not putting money on the budget that we can't provide the amount of support. What we're looking for is having you tell us, separate from the budget, how much time will that particular project or proposal or in-kind contribution take in the way of the individual's time. So again, we're not asking for how much you're asking for on the budget. We're asking for how much time that project, proposal, or in-kind contribution will take in the way of the individual's time. So that is truly vital that folks understand that. The in-kind contributions that are intended for use on the project being proposed to NSF, you told us very clearly when you submitted your comments to the Federal Register, if it's in-kind contributions about the project I'm working on, there's a better way for us to provide that. We agreed, and we changed it so that any in-kind contributions that are intended for use on the project or proposal being proposed to NSF should be documented as part of facilities, equipment, and other resources section of the proposal. So these are, we've got some examples. We also have FAQs, which we are continually updating on this issue. So this is a vitally important understanding for all of you about what NSF is really asking for about current and pending support. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk about some of the changes that we have made based on the community feedback. Again, this has weighed into exactly what we have said about the biographical sketch and current and pending support. All other parts of the PAP guide are being implemented on June 1st. However, we have been hearing from you loudly and clearly since we posted the biographical sketch format in Science CV, as well as the NSF fillable format. And based on what you told us in April, we recently posted a new May version that addresses many of the issues that folks are facing. For the first time, we are now permitting use of et al. For publication citations in the products section in the event that listing multiple authors makes it difficult to fit the information into the allotted space. That applies to both the NSF fillable format as well as Science CV. We've increased the space for the product section by removing instructional text. Links were added to relevant PAP guide sections. That change applies to the NSF fillable format. We removed the requirement to include the NSF ID, and we've added a version date to the document so that you will know what is the latest version of that to make sure you're using it. Again, I can't reiterate enough how valuable this feedback has been to all of us. It really is helping us improve the functionality. It's helping us address user issues. So while we will not be checking starting June 1st, on whether or not you are using an NSF approved format, I can't emphasize, we still want you to use them, because that is going to be the only way that we are able to address any issues that you may have. So please, we are really asking you to continue to use those formats. Next slide, please. I actually just covered this, so if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we've also made some changes to the current and pending support format. We've increased the number of project/proposal entries from 10 to 15 on the NSF fillable format. Now, I will tell you, this is one where we were very intrigued by the feedback that we were receiving, because we based the numbers in what we've developed on how many an individual typically has. And our number for 10 entries was over 95%. Now it seems there are many more than that. So we've increased that number to 15 for the fillable format. And this works for 98% of proposals submitted to NSF. If you're using the Science CV format and you have a faculty member, or you are a faculty member that is in that 2%, you can use Science CV to increase your numbers. We've also updated the award number field to accept both numbers and letters, as we know of other funding agencies that use both, including our colleagues at NIH. So we've addressed that issue. We've also replaced calendar year with year for consistency with the PAP guide when you were telling us the number of person months or partial person months per year that are committed to the project. And if you have a project that spans 2 years, you insert the latter of the 2 years in the box that you're filling out. Next slide, please. Okay, I wanted to also, as I said in the beginning, address some information that is from our colleagues in the Division of Financial Management. We didn't want to wait till next week. They wanted to get this news out as soon as possible. The Awardee Cash Management Service, or ACM, yes, that's not a typo, it's $, will continue to process grant payments without interruption through the pandemic. Grantees should continue to draw down reimbursements as usual and work with their assigned NSF grant accountant with any questions. NSF is sending out monthly notices for awards with funding under canceling appropriations, as they always do. These funds will no longer be available for drawdown after September 30, 2020. And NSF will continue to send out more frequent notices if you have an award that has canceling appropriations closer to the end of the fiscal year. Due to state and local government stay-at-home protocols, NSF is experiencing delays in processing manual checks submitted for grant refunds or adjustments. In order to efficiently process refunds, NSF is encouraging adjustments through either payment offset and ACMS, or submitting refunds electronically through pay.gov. NSF will continue to provide future information on the use of pay.gov in future communications to our ACMS points of contact. Next slide, please. NSF proposal submission modernization is always a very exciting topic of late for me to talk about, because we actually are making unbelievable progress in terms of our use of a PMS, a proposal submission modernization. And it is very important that you understand what those changes are. So we have separately submitted collaborative proposals came online on March 31st, 2020. And with that, proposal preparation aspects have changed. Proposals can select a separately submitted collaborative proposal as an option. That was not available to you prior to March 31st. A new submission pending status for separately submitted collaborative proposals. It's important that you understand that this functionality is very different. When we're doing proposal submission modernization, we didn't just take what was in Fastlane and move it over. Those of you who have been working with this on PSM for a number of years, we really are trying to make changes to streamline, to make it more user-friendly, to make it more intuitive. And this new submission pending status is something that's really very different. So a new submission pending status informs the proposer organization that their proposal submission is pending and it's in a queue until all linked lead and non-lead proposals in the collaboration attain a submission pending status. After all proposals in the collaboration are in the queue with a submission pending status, the proposal can then be submitted to NSF as a set. So remember, this is really very important that you understand that until they're all in this submission pending status, it can't be submitted to NSF. So it's really important that you all work with your collaborators to make sure that everything is submitted in a timely basis so that they can, so that the proposal can then be submitted to NSF as a set. Spring 2020, other authorized user changes. Users with the OAU role will be able to assist with proposal preparation in research.gov without being required to also have another organization approved role. This is really important. That was brought up to us at an FDP meeting. We didn't realize this issue, and so we fixed it right away, as soon as we could, rather, to make sure that OAUs could really facilitate their researchers in preparation of proposals. So, next slide, please. This is just a snapshot of our outreach page. We continue to have a lot going on. I really think that it's important for people to now take use of these, particularly in these COVID environment, that you can get access to information and it is available. We recently posted a webinar that we conducted with NIH on the biographical sketch and current and pending support documents that I just discussed, and I would encourage you to take a look at that. And with that, that ends the formal part of my presentation. And I do know that there were questions that came in. I do apologize for the fact that there was some loud noise in the background. I'm sorry about that. And I would happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Jane. This is Debbie. For the sake of time, because we have a very small window for the OSTP update.
I can't hear you, Debbie.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So for the sake of time, we will move on to the OSTP questions. We will provide you the questions separately and provide you the opportunity to provide answers to those questions offline. All right.
Okay.
So
Thank
with
you
that,
all very much for your time and attention.
So that we will move to Lisa Nichols, who is with OSTP. Are you online, Lisa?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just going to go ahead and pull up my presentation and move to the slide number 2, the meetings with government science leaders. So first of all, thank you for having me. And I'm really, it's so unfortunate that we can't all be together. Miss seeing all of you and appreciate the opportunity to just take a couple of minutes to talk about what we've been doing at OSTP. And with considerations for the time, I'll just move fairly quickly through these slides. So one of the things I wanted to mention are the meetings that we're having with government science leaders. This is OSTP Director Kelvin Drogemeyer has had weekly and bi-weekly meetings with government science leaders. I've listed the countries here, and this has been an opportunity to share data and information regarding the SARS-CoV-2 virus and COVID-19, thinking about, in particular, science-based discussions and concerns and common areas of interest, such as, the sensitivity and specificity of diagnostic and serology tests, or, concerns about supplies and reagents, status of clinical trials, and other areas. So it's been a really effective mechanism for communicating with different countries on issues that are important to the R&D enterprise and for the nation. And with respect to those meetings, we actually had on March 13, these science leaders issued a call for open access. So they asked publishers to voluntarily make their publications and data on COVID-19 and related viruses and information available immediately to the public. And this had actually, the Wellcome Trust had previously made a similar call, but the issue was that the publications weren't available in a machine-readable format in a way that they could be aggregated in a public repository like PubMed Central, and they could be text and data mined, and secondary analyses could be published. And so a number of publishers and journals answered that call, and as of May 8th, we have approximately 49,000 articles that were deposited in PubMed Central from 50 different publishers, more than 9,000 specific to COVID-19, and articles have been accessed more than 8 million times. And on a related note, we also, in a government, this is the next slide, government university industry partnership. On March 16th, our U.S. Chief Technology Officer, Michael Kratsios at OSTP, along with others, the Allen Institute, Chan Zuckerberg, Georgetown, Microsoft, and NIH, developed a data set of not only these publications that were coming in on COVID and related areas through PubMed Central, but also through preprint servers as well, a number of different preprint servers. And so they created a data set called CORD-19, and you can find it at the website that I have listed here, semanticscholar.org. And then in addition to that, we have researchers that have been submitting data mining tools that will allow the community to answer high priority scientific questions through the Kaggle platform, which I've also included a link to. And I'll just mention that that data set, as of I think yesterday, is up to 128,000 articles. 60,000 of them are full text, and it's now contributed to research that's led to dozens of scholarly publications. The other area we're focused on is restoring research operations. So we've had a number of meetings with higher education associations, university presidents and chancellors, and medical school and research deans. We had a meeting with university presidents last week and actually just got off a call with medical school and research deans this afternoon. And areas of focus have been, what are the short-term issues and solutions associated with restarting the research enterprise, and in particular, the non-essential research operations. In addition to that, what are non-monetary policy actions that the U.S. government can take? And then what are the opportunities to capitalize on what we've done to kind of speed up and accelerate research? Are there, and also to strengthen the enterprise, to make it more resilient, to make it more efficient and effective. And actually, some of you may have seen a recent executive order released that relates to this last point. Very quickly, open science and public access. We had 2 requests for information out. One was on public access to peer-reviewed scholarly publications, data, and code. It closed on May 6th. We received close to to 300 responses. So we're reviewing all of those responses and really appreciate hearing from all of you who are participating on this webinar who submitted comments. In addition to that, we had a second RFC on draft desirable characteristics of data repositories. And we're also currently reviewing, we actually received a substantial number of responses and reviewing those at this time as well. In addition to that, we held stakeholder meetings on the future of scholarly communications with research VPRs, university VPRs, library deans and directors, commercial and nonprofit publishers, federal and non-federal funders, investigators, and provosts. And then recently we had a call on April 30th where we brought together all of these groups to talk about the future of scholarly publication and the evolution that we're seeing. And so those have been really informative conversations, and certainly we would like to continue to have these kinds of conversations. I'll mention too, on February 28th, we had a joint meeting with the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine's roundtable on aligning incentives for open science. We had leaders from, it was approximately 70 participants, leaders from government agencies, academia, nonprofit philanthropic organizations, and publishing groups, and came together on a set of goals and principles, and will continue to work collaboratively with the national academies as well as with these groups. And I've included on the slides here for all of you to review afterward, after this presentation, some of the principles that we came away with during this meeting. In terms of reducing administrative workloads, you know, we continue to work through the CAR subcommittee, Coordinating Administrative Requirements for Research, with Jean Feldman, Michelle Bowles, and other agency representatives who have spoken or will speak today, to try to reduce administrative work. And all of these agencies certainly are working to do this with respect to their own agency efforts in collaboration with other agencies through this subcommittee and also with OMB. So one of the areas, again, that we've been focused on is financial conflict of interest. And we have assessed variations across federal agencies, the 2011 revisions to the PHS regulations. AAMC recently conducted a follow-on survey as part of their metrics project, which has helped further inform what we know with respect to the PHS regulations and their impact and effectiveness. And then we have all of the comments that we received from all of you, many of you, from the JCOR RFI, where you commented on financial conflict of interest. And what we heard both from the AAMC survey in February of this year and the JCOR responses was that the community is in favor of a unified policy, federal policy, and certainly you let us know what you liked and what you didn't with respect to existing federal agency policies and concerns with respect to burden and the PHS regulations. So thank you again for your responses to that RFI. With respect to the grant application process, again, we heard from all of you who responded to the JCOR RFI on this topic as well, and have we did an assessment of what the current agency requirements are, and then what we've done is looked at what are opportunities to streamline, potentially in a coordinated way, application requirements. In terms of what agencies need to assess a proposal and what the community has put forward, what they think would be necessary to assess that proposal are not necessarily in the same place. And so how do you find a middle ground? So we make sure that our agencies and reviewers have all of the information that we need or that they need, while we're at the same time streamlining the application process, recognizing that success rates are hovering maybe somewhere on average around the 20% rate. And so that's something that we're doing right now and getting feedback from agencies, and we'll continue to move forward with our efforts there. And so with that, I will say thank you very much again for this opportunity to participate, and look forward to talking to all of you again in some capacity. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. This is Debbie again. If you have time for just a few questions, I have a few that came in.
Sure.
First question, has OSTP had discussions with OMB about extending the flexibilities?
Yeah, so my understanding is that OMB is currently reassessing the 3 memos. So that's, you know, certainly we've been in touch, and it's my understanding, you know, as they would have, given that the 90-day period will expire in June, that certainly that's something that they have to consider, whether or not they'll extend those flexibilities. We've certainly heard from the community that there is a need to do so, and to do so over a long time period, and we've communicated that.
Thank you. Second question and last question. Can you provide some examples of short-term issues and solutions associated with restarting the research enterprise? Is there a report to refer to?
There isn't a report to refer to, but what I'll tell you, some of the things that we've heard, so the flexibility certainly with respect to that OMB has provided have been very helpful. Delaying the onset of newer revised federal rules has been put forward, for example, Title IX, and we just heard from NSF that they're delaying, you know, implementing these formats. So we've heard certainly about that, addressing visa delays, you know, and opportunities to address that. For example, is it possible to do video interviews because of concerns about kind of the backlog right now on with respect to visas. You know, certainly we've heard about the concerns about availability of resources. I think with respect to PPE and diagnostic testing and reagents, I think that my understanding is that we shouldn't experience, you know, shortages, but I think there are also might be concerns about lab supplies. I'm not aware of any shortages at this time, but that is something that we'll keep in mind. I think in terms of opportunities, preparedness and response and the role of universities, addressing disparities, promoting science. Science has had such a large role in addressing COVID-19 and really highlighting that. And then in addition to that, we've also heard about continued virtual opportunities, for example, that peer review panels and other meetings that have taken place virtually, considering this going forward, because it really saves faculty a lot of time in terms of not having to travel, and it saves, you know, institutions and you know, research labs money as well. So, so this is something that we've heard about. And you know, there are a number of other areas as well, flexibilities with respect to F&A and other areas. So I'm happy to talk about those more, you know, offline if people are interested. But those are some of the areas that we've discussed.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
We will move on. We have a pre-recorded message from the EPA. So I'm going to turn it over to Alex. Can you run the videotape?
Hello, everybody. My name is Alexandra Raver. I'm here to share some Environmental Protection Agency updates for the Federal Demonstration Partnership, May 2020. I'm going to talk to you about the general EPA COVID-19 information, some specific grant information, recent EPA recipient application information notices, and our EPA grants listserv. EPA's general information on COVID-19 is available at our website, www.epa.gov/coronavirus. And this webpage includes information on disinfectants, drinking water and wastewater, our agency providing personal protective equipment, and some general news on the coronavirus from our agency. The Environmental Protection Agency also has a grant opportunity currently available. It is the State Environmental Justice Cooperative Agreement Program, and the agency is making $1 million available in grant funding to states to help local environmental justice communities address COVID-19's concerns faced by low-income and minority communities. While these lists of entities are ineligible to receive these awards, we highly encourage you to partner with these organizations to perform a successful application. So while this group, FDP, is usually made up of universities, both private and public higher education institutions, this could be a great opportunity for you all to serve in a partnership capacity with states that are eligible for this grant opportunity. The funding opportunity closes June 30th, 2020. There is a link here in the presentation for the request for applications. You can also view the information for the request for applications on grants.gov, and the Office of Environmental Justice is holding pre-application assistance calls. For some additional information on grants related to COVID-19, we have some frequently asked questions, and they are available at the website there. We understand that COVID-19 may have an impact on EPA's financial assistance agreements, and the information within these FQs supplements the Office of Management and Budget's various memos regarding COVID-19 and provides information for recipients, applicants for grants, for EPA grants and cooperative agreements regarding the impacts of COVID-19. Our frequent questions about grants and coronavirus include topics on grant procedures, allowable cost, disruptions of operations, procurements, extensions, grant competitions, and suspension and debarment. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our recent EPA recipient and application information notices that are also called REINs. All of our REINs and any other policy-related information are available on EPA's Grants Policy Resource page, and the link is provided there. Two REINs that I'd like to highlight are EPA's implementation of Executive Order 13798, which is promoting free speech and religious liberty, and the Office of Management and Budget's memorandum guidance regarding federal grants and Executive Order 13798. This was issued earlier this month and provides guidance to applicants and recipients on Executive Order 13798. The next REIN that I'd like to tell you about was very recent, and this is the establishment of standards for the submission of administrative and financial assistance agreements form documents with electronic or digital signatures by email. This was issued earlier this month, and it informs applicants and recipients of EPA grants that of the process by which EPA will accept administrative and financial assistance agreement forms or documents with electronic or digital signatures by email. Documents submitted through this process will become part of EPA's official record. And finally, I'd like to just remind everybody about our EPA grants listserv. The EPA's Office of Grants and Debarment uses this listserv to send out periodic updates about new guidance and information posted on our website, such as the REINs that I just informed you about, new trainings and webinars available to potential applicants and recipients, changes in grants management requirements, and other pertinent general grants information. And you can sign up for this EPA grants listserv at the following site. It is directly available on our banner on our EPA grants homepage. And again, you can subscribe to the listserv by clicking on that button or the web link that I just provided. All you need to do is submit your first and last name and an email address, and you will be signed up to receive any information related to EPA grants that we send out. Here's my contact information. Again, my name is Alexandra Raver. I'm a policy team lead and senior grant specialist with the National Policy Training and Compliance Division of EPA's Office of Grants and Debarment. And if you have any questions about the information that I shared with you, please feel free to contact me. Thank you very much, and I hope everybody stays safe and well during this crazy time.
Thank you, Alexandra. I know you can't hear me, but thank you for being so innovative with your federal agency update. So folks, we made it through our first virtual federal agency update. As you can see, the federal partners are alive and well. We are fully engaged in this situation, and we continue to work through the challenges of COVID-19. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dick Seligman to close us out.
Thank you very much, Debbie. We'd like to thank you, Debbie, and all of our federal colleagues for providing a very, very informative and timely federal agency update session. And as we indicated earlier, we'll attempt to respond to any questions that weren't addressed during the program, and those will be posted on our website. So as we bring this session to an end, we want to call your attention to the remaining programs that are part of the FDP virtual meeting. The next 3 programs will take place on Tuesday, May 26th, and they include a session hosted by the Animal Care and Use Subcommittee dealing with the Universal Protocol Form, CUSP, and the Guide. And later in the afternoon at 2 o'clock Eastern, there will be a faculty forum and meeting. And finally, on Tuesday late afternoon at 4 o'clock, there will be a webinar led by the Subawards Subcommittee. And with that, I'll turn it back to Michelle.
Thank you, Dick. The final 2 days of the virtual FDP meetings will proceed as follows. On Wednesday, May 27th, we will present 2 sessions. The first is called COVID-19 Federal Panel and is scheduled from 1 to 3 p.m. The second is Supporting COVID-19 Research Data Transfer and Use Agreement Needs and will convene from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. The final program event will take place on Thursday, May 28th with a session called The Impacts of COVID-19 on Research Activities, the University Perspective. This session is set to be held from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Please join me and Dick in once again thanking all of our federal panelists for their comments and participation in today's session. We look forward to connecting with you throughout the coming week on our program and hope that you enjoyed today's event. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and we hope to see you again on Tuesday. And with that, we conclude today's program. Thank you.